So, good afternoon, ma'am. I think we can start. Students are joining still.
Camera to on my one. Okay.
Ma'am, good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon.
Nice to see you after so many days.
Yes, same here.
So, already means vacation has already started, or
No. We haven't yet started the end term exam. I think it is going to start by 25th of May.
25th. After that, on June only.
From June 22nd onwards, I think we'll be having our vacation.
Okay. So at that time we'll see it. Okay, this time we'll
Yeah,
think of a proposal. Fine.
Sure.
In NRF, we'll write a proposal and we'll see. So anyway, so let me introduce you. Then you can start the session.
Yeah.
Yes. So good afternoon, one and all present here. Today is the last day, and this one is the second session. And today we have with us Dr. Sangamitra Nath, who is a assistant professor in Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Tejpur University. Ma'am, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. So at Tejpur University, I have also completed my study in Assam. That's why I know ma'am very well. Her research interests include speech processing. Sometimes in NLP also she has done some work in embedded system and especially on low research languages technologies. She has contributed significantly to research in Assamese, Mizo speech and language processing, dialect translation, speech synthesis, and folk song classification using AI and machine learning techniques. So, ma'am, I think your topic today is this speech signal analysis. Hopefully, this you'll be using this PRAT also, huh?
Right.
So you can tell to the participant. So, ma'am, session is yours now. You can start.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll be sharing my screen.
Yes, ma'am.
It was.
Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
Slide show to put us in.
You can cross that one, ma'am.
Huh?
You can cross that one with media. Yes. So it is in front. Yeah. Yes.
Slide show.
Make it slide. Yes. Now it's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sangamitra Nath from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Tejpur University, Assam. So actually, I was asked to present a lecture on speech signal analysis using the PRAT tool. So as I assume most of you are already into speech processing, but this presentation that I'm going to give, I think that will be especially helpful to those who are just newly have joined the speech research community. So I'll be doing some basic analysis and I'll show you how to use the PRAT tool to carry out those analysis. Let me first start with the content. So the entire content is divided into three main parts. In the first part, I'll be talking about the speech signal, what exactly is the speech signal, then the speech production process, speech communication, the information content of a speech signal, then speech features, etc. And in the second part, I'll be talking about the different types of analysis that is used on the speech signal. For example, pitch, intensity analysis, spectrographic analysis, and formant analysis. And in the third part, I will be demonstrating how to use the PRAT tool to carry out this analysis. So this lecture being the last of the entire workshop, I think you must have, you're all very familiar with everything. You have done a lot of analysis and modeling using machine learning and all. But the topic that I'm covering, this is not exactly machine learning. This will be something that you would do before using machine learning models. So prior to using machine learning models, you will like to carry out some particular analysis on the speech signal, extract some features which can be fed as input to the machine learning model. So I'm starting with what exactly is a speech signal. The speech signal, which is in fact the most natural, intuitive, and preferred means of communication by human beings. It is defined as the expression of thoughts and feelings by articulating sounds. So this speech signal is a one-dimensional function of a one-dimensional variable, because I would say that at every instant of time, there is only one amplitude value. So however, I'd like to mention here that although it looks that it's such a very simple signal, the production mechanism is in fact very complex. It is generated by a plethora of parallel nerve commands from the brain, controlling the muscles of the various organs participating in the articulatory process: vocal cords, tongue body, tongue tip, lips, soft palate, etc. So you can see how many different organs are involved in the production of the speech signal. Now, another very important characteristic of the speech signal is the variability. The speech signal is very highly variable in nature. So the perceptual variability of speech exists in the form of various languages such as dialects and accents, and more intricate variability at the speech signal level exists in the form of varying amplitudes, duration, pitch, timbre, and speaker variability. Now, coming to how a speech signal is stored. So when a person speaks, what happens? The sound waves will travel through the air as analog signals. So these signals will vary continuously with time and amplitude. So now that is how the sound waves are traveling through the medium, which is the air. And then the microphones, if I use a microphone, which is the sensor, it is going to convert the fluctuating air pressure into electrical signals like voltages or currents. And this is the form in which we are going to deal with in speech signal processing. Then ADCs can be used to change the analog voltages into binary digital signals. And this speech signal will be represented by a sequence of numbers, say xn, which represents the relative air amplitude, air pressure in terms of amplitude at time instant n. Now, the analog signal is measured at regular intervals, and this process is called sampling. So you're going to take samples of the analog signal at measured at time intervals, and that is where the sampling rate comes in. For example, if I say that the sampling rate is 8 kilohertz, it means that there are 8,000 samples per second. And finally, it will be quantized. Yes?
Sorry, ma'am. Somebody let me mute all.
Okay, it's okay.
Fine, ma'am. You can continue.
Yeah, sure. So these samples are then quantized. For example, we may use 8-bit quantization, which means that there will be 2 to the power 8, 2 to the power, that is 256 levels, and that we say is the resolution. That is, it's a 8-bit resolution signal, speech signal. So a 16-bit signal at a sampling frequency of 16 kilohertz means there are 16,000 samples for each second of the signal, and each sample has a resolution of 16 bits per sample. Now, the most typical format for storing sound signals is the wave file format, which is basically a way to store a time sequence with typically either 16 or 32-bit accuracy as integer or float or mu-long. Now, the sampling rates can again vary in a large range, say between 8 and 384 kilohertz. And these files typically have no compression, such that recording hours of sound can require a lot of disk space. I'm talking about the wave file format. So, for example, an hour of mono sound with a sampling rate of 44.1 kilohertz requires 160 megabytes of disk space, because we are taking 44,100 samples per second. So 1 hour, how much space will be required, provided one byte is used to store one sample. Now, this is the speech production process. The figure on the left, if you see the figure on the left, you will see the human speech production mechanism, where we have the different organs like the diaphragm, lung, trachea, esophagus, larynx, pharyngeal cavity, then the jaw, oral cavity, teeth, tongue, lip, nostril, nasal cavity, the soft palate and the hard palate. These are all different organs or articulators which are participating in the production, in the speech production process. The figure on the right, if you see, this represents the source filter model of the speech production mechanism, where power in the form of air pressure from the lungs moves through the glottis, which contains the vocal folds, and that is considered to be the source. And then the waves or the air is pushed out of the vocal tract, which is referred to as the filter. And why this is the filter? Because it filters the resonant frequencies. Okay, only some of the frequencies will be allowed to pass, whereas it is going to attenuate the remaining frequency. This bottom figure, this is a mechanical model of a speech production process, where you can see that the piston, if I move the piston, then using muscle force, it is replicating the lungs, and this valves replicate the vocal cords. The air will be pushed out of these valves, wherein the valves will start vibrating, and then it will move through the pharyngeal cavity. At this juncture, there is the velum, and this is also a valve. And if the velum is raised, then the entire air will pass through the oral cavity and through the mouth. If the velum is lowered, then some amount of the air will be pushed out of the nasal cavity, producing nasal sounds. Now, let's have a look at the entire speech communication process that takes place between a talker and a listener. That's a speaker and a listener. So we start with the speaker. The message is formulated in the brain, and now the various decisions are taken as to what type of language will be used, then and what type of other parameters that will be used to form the message. Then the next is message coding, where in the message coding, the content of the speech signal, that is the message, will be coded, and then it will be passed here, where the nerve impulses will be giving neuromuscular commands. So these nerve impulses, in fact, they will be instructing or commanding the different articulators in the speech production mechanism to produce the desired speech. Now, on the listener side, the speech will fall on the ear, where we have the speech perception mechanism. This is going to be converted to nerve impulses, and finally these nerve impulses will be decoded in the brain so that message comprehension takes place. Now, as I said, the speech signal carries a wide range of information. So we have the different types of information which is contained in the speech signal can be widely categorized into these three different categories. That is the linguistic information, paralinguistic information, and non-linguistic information. So linguistic information refers to the symbolic information that is represented by a set of discrete symbols and rules for the combination. And for example, the meaning of words, then dividing the words into syllables, dividing the syllables into phonemes, then composing those sentences using the rules of grammar and the different and the vocabulary. So all these will constitute the linguistic information, and this information is in fact controlled by the speaker. The paralinguistic information refers to the information which is not inferable from the written counterpart. So this is not visible in the written counterpart, but added deliberately by the speaker to modify or supplement linguistic information. So an example can be to change a declarative sentence to a question. So how the speaker is going to manipulate or change the stress, or how he's going to change the pitch, how he's going to change the intensity to emphasize different words in a particular sentence. So these all belong to the paralinguistic information, which is also referred to as the prosody. And this type of information is controlled by the speaker. The third type of information is non-linguistic information, mainly the speaker properties, because from the speech we also come to know about the age, the gender, individual morphological characteristics, condition of health of the speaker, etc. And these are in fact not controlled by the speaker. This is inherent of the speaker. So this again the same speech production process, but in terms of the different types of information. As you can see, message planning using rules of grammar. So this is where we have the linguistic information. Then the utterance planning, how to produce the utterance using rules of prosody. So that is again paralinguistic information. Then we have the motor command generation, because the articulators, motor nerves will instruct the articulators to move to generate the or to produce the speech sounds. So here the physiological constraints will play a role, and this is here also you will be getting the non-linguistic as well as paralinguistic information. And finally the speech sound production using the physical constraints. For example, physical constraints can be the how the vocal fold vibration is taking place in the speaker, etc. So this is again non-linguistic information. And finally we'll be getting the segmental and suprasegmental features of the speech signal. Now coming to the speech features, the speech features are again widely categorized into segmental and suprasegmental features. So segmental features mainly where small segments of the speech signal are considered, and suprasegmental features are the elements of speech that affect the entire syllables, words, or phrases rather than the individual sounds. So this will be, you can say this is a long-term feature, and these are also referred to as the prosodic features. So these features including pitch, for example, pitch, perceived frequency of a sound; stress, that is the emphasis placed on a particular syllable or word when speaking; duration, that is the length of the time it takes to pronounce a sound or syllable; rhythm, pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables in speech; intonation, that is how the pitch varies across a phrase or sentence. All these play a very important role in the meaning and understanding of the spoken languages. So now I move to the second part, which is the different types of analysis. So here I'll be talking about pitch analysis, intensity analysis, then spectrographic analysis, and formant analysis. So first, pitch analysis. So what exactly is pitch? Pitch originates due to vocal fold vibration, and the frequency at which the vocal folds vibrate is the fundamental frequency. It is an attribute of voice pitch. So pitch or fundamental frequency is associated with voice speech. So when the air is pushed out of the through the vocal cords, then the vocal folds start vibrating, and the frequency at which this vocal folds vibrate, that is the fundamental frequency. And pitch is the perceptual element of the fundamental frequency. So fundamental frequency is the actual frequency that can be measured, where pitch, or it is related, it is used alternately also as fundamental frequency, but it is not exactly fundamental frequency. It is the perceptual value of the fundamental frequency. Now, the periodicity associated with voice segments is defined as the pitch period T0 in the time domain and pitch frequency or fundamental frequency in the frequency domain. And there are different pitch estimation techniques like the autocorrelation method, Capstrom pitch determination, and single inverse filtering tracking technique, or the SIFT, which is used for pitch estimation. So in the Pratt tool, as I'll be showing you later, the autocorrelation method is used to estimate the pitch. Now, why is this pitch analysis so important? Pitch is an important attribute of voice pitch. It contains speaker-specific information. It is also needed for speech coding tasks, and pitch estimation is an important issue in speech processing. So if you take the case of speech recognition systems, especially for tonal languages like, say, Mandarin, Thai, then for Northeast language, we have Mizo. Then many of the Northeast Indian languages like Bodo, Tiwa, Rapha, all of these are tonal languages, which means that the same word will have different meaning depending on the tone which is used in that while uttering that particular word. So especially for speech recognition systems, that is why pitch analysis is extremely important. Then pitch is also crucial for prosodic variations in text-to-speech systems and spoken language systems. Now, in text-to-speech systems, without this prosodic, because here we are talking about pitch as a prosodic feature. So without this manipulating the pitch, we will be getting very robotic sound. So for natural sounding synthesized pitch, it will require proper pitch variation. Now, the pitch counter is also used for speaker identification because different speakers will be having different pitch. Now, again, this pitch is mainly dependent on the physiological aspects. For example, that is why we have the pitch values of females are much higher as compared to their male counterparts. So this is mainly because it depends on the vocal folds. The vocal folds are vibrating. So, and again, how fast the vocal fold is going to oscillate or move, that will again depend on the size or mass and tension of the vocal folds. So usually males, they will be having a larger or a vocal folds with a greater mass. So here what happens, the fundamental frequency reduces. So this pitch counter is also used for speaker identification, emotion recognition, voice activity detection tasks, and to determine sentence meaning also. Pitch can also be used to detect the gender of speaker, because generally lower pitch means male, higher pitch means female, or even higher it can be children. Pitch can also be used to discriminate normal and pathological voice, because abnormal pitch patterns may indicate vocal fold disorders or neurological conditions or speech impairments. So pitch analysis is highly important for clinical diagnosis. Then pitch analysis is also used in melody extraction, singing voice analysis, and folk song research as well. So this figure on the right, if you see here, this is actually the time domain waveform of the word she, where this part is the sh, that is the fricative sh, and this is the e, the vowel e. So you can see here, this part is noise like excitation, if you see here, and here this is, if this is zoomed, you will be getting something like this. This is like this. So this is an example of a voice segment. So although it is not exactly periodic, if you see here, but it is almost periodic. This from here to here, you can see it is repeating. It is repeating, right? So, and this is an example of an unvoiced speech segment which has no periodicity. So if you measure from here to here and take the inverse of this, we'll be getting the fundamental frequency as is shown in this diagram. From here to here, it is 10.4 milliseconds. So if I take the reciprocal of this, I'll be getting 96.1 hertz, which is the frequency. Now we move on to the intensity analysis. So when sound is produced, it creates waves that propagate through a medium. The maximum displacement of the wave from its rest position is known as the amplitude. And this intensity is proportional to amplitude square. It is a measure of the energy that this waveform is carrying, and it's a measurable physical phenomenon. High amplitude wave means that it is carrying large amount of energy. Low amplitude wave carries small amount of energy. The intensity of a sound is the power of the sound in watts divided by the area the sound covers in square meters. The loudness of a sound relates the intensity of any given sound to the intensity at the threshold of hearing, and this is measured in decibels. So, for example, the threshold of human hearing has an intensity of about this much watts per meter square, and this corresponds to 0 decibels. So here's an example. A whisper is between 20 to 30 decibels. Noisy conversation is about 50 decibels. A vacuum cleaner is about 70 dB. A lawn mower is about 90 dB, and a car horn at 1 meter distance is about 110 dB. So again, why intensity analysis is important? Because the intensity or the energy or the loudness associated with the speech signal carries valuable information about speech production, emphasis, emotion, and speech activity. So for speech activity detection, intensity can be used. Then again, for intensity control can be used for accented text-to-speech, because the moment now as I'm speaking, I'm stressing or I'm putting more intensity in certain words, and in certain words my intensity is reducing. So that way, for natural sounding accented text speech, we need intensity control. Then stress and emphasis detection. For example, angry speech is going to have higher intensity, sad speech will have lower intensity, excited speech will have fluctuating intensity. Then intensity analysis can also be used for speaker and speaking style analysis, because a particular speaker again will have a different speaking style. So that style also, for that style also, intensity analysis is important. Then speech recognition intensity helps identify speech boundaries, voiced, unvoiced regions, and important acoustic events. So for in speech recognition also, intensity analysis plays a very important role. Similarly, for emotion recognition, as I said, for sad speech, excited speech, so angry speech. So here also intensity contour is going to change. Then for clinical speech analysis, prosody and rhythm analysis, audio and speech enhancement, these are all different areas where intensity analysis plays a very important role. Towards the right, if you see, this is a figure. This has been generated in Pratt. And if you see here, the blue line actually is the pitch contour. This yellow line, it is showing you how the intensity is changing in a particular utterance. So this is a particular sentence, and you can see that the intensity is varying all throughout the sentence. And if you see here, it is increasing, it's decreasing, increasing, it's decreasing, right? So usually what happens, this type of rising falling nature of the intensity contour can be used to detect sometimes words, sometimes syllables inside a word. So if the peaks, these peaks, this is a peak here. So if this peak, that is, they are preceded by dips in intensity. So this peak can be considered to be a potential syllable nuclei. For example, like I said, this particular portion may correspond to a syllable, or it may also correspond to a particular word. For example, here if you see, it's very likely that this is a particular word, and inside this word there are two syllables. This is one syllable and this is another syllable, and this peak is the nucleus of the first syllable, and this is the nucleus of the second syllable. That is how the pitch contour, the intensity contour can be used to gain information about the signal, the speech signal. The next type of analysis is the spectrographic analysis, which is again a very widely used technique for studying the acoustic phonetic characteristics of different phonemes in a language. So I assume all of you already know what's a spectrogram, but I'm just going through it once again. A spectrogram is a visual representation of the spectrum of frequencies of a signal as it varies with time, and it displays signal strength over time at the various frequencies present in a waveform. So basically, technically speaking, I would say it is built from a sequence of spectra by stacking them together in time and then compressing the amplitude axis into a contour map drawn in a grayscale. So in a spectrogram, what we have is in the final spectrogram, on the x-axis we will have the time, on the y-axis we'll have the frequencies, okay, and then how strong these frequencies are, that is the amplitude of those frequencies, that will be present as a grayscale value. So black is used to signal the most energy, while white is used to signal the least energy. So two popular spectrographic representations are used in analysis. One is the wideband spectrogram and the other is the narrowband spectrogram, depending on what type of resolution is used, that is spectral resolution or temporal resolution is preserved in the final representation. So in wideband spectrogram, what we have is we will be having a wider band of frequency. So this is going to provide us better temporal resolution. While in narrowband spectrogram, narrow band of frequency, so it's going to provide better resolution in the frequency domain. In wideband spectrograms, the spectral information is averaged over frequency windows of bandwidth 100 to 200 Hertz, and the corresponding time window chosen is around 10 to 5 milliseconds. Whereas an example of a wideband spectrogram computed with a time, I'll show you in the next slide. A narrowband spectrogram is computed using narrow filter function in the frequency domain, which in turn corresponds to a longer segment length in the time domain. Now, wideband spectrograms are used to measure formants, and narrowband spectrograms are used for measuring F0 and intonation. So I'll show this in the next slide. As you can see here, this is the speech signal, the time domain representation of the speech signal, and this is the spectrogram. This is the spectrogram. So this is an utterance. The doctor examined the patient's knees, and here the window size is a 6 millisecond window is used. So if you see here, these dark bands are nothing but the resonances, which are the formant frequencies, resonant frequencies or the formant frequencies. So this is an example of a wideband spectrogram where the time domain, it's better time resolution. You can see it here. And this one now, this is another utterance. Here, this is a wideband spectrogram. This is a narrowband spectrogram. Both these wideband and narrowband both belong to the same speech signal. But you can see here in the wideband spectrogram, you can see the formants in a better way. So these are nothing but the formants. Whereas in this one, if you see here, in the narrowband spectrogram, these horizontal striations, if you move towards the left, towards the y-axis, you will be getting the fundamental frequency and the harmonics. So here again, you can see here, this one, see, in this example, if you see here, the first horizontal striation that you see, that is the fundamental, that corresponds to the fundamental frequency. The next horizontal striation corresponds to the first harmonic, second harmonic, third harmonic, and so on. This is an example of a narrowband spectrogram. So this type of an analysis is used for identifying the voiced, unvoiced, plosive or stop consonants, silence regions. For example, in voiced, in the case of vowels, a regular formant structure, 3 to 4 formant frequencies, and pitch harmonics, that is the vertical striations in the case of wideband spectrogram, are used for identifying the voiced regions. For nasals and voice stops, low frequency regions and pitch harmonics are used as cues. So as you can see here, this, as I said, I have a better example here. Yeah. So if you see here, this is the first this is the fundamental frequency. These red lines that you see, these are the harmonics. And here, if you see, this is the formants. These are the resonances, which are there in the voiced region. So the voiced region, the voice sound, it can be a vowel, or it can also be a semi-vowel, or it can be nasals, or it can be voiced consonants also. Then unvoiced, energy at high frequency regions and no regular formant structure. For example, you see here, this one. If you see in the fricatives, in case of fricatives, for example, this is fur, this is the friction noise. So this is the high frequency noise that is present in the fricative. So that you can, so this will enable us to identify the fricatives also in the spectrogram. So in that way, the different sounds can be identified using the help of a spectrogram. Then plosives or the stop consonants. So the plosives or stop consonants, these are basically how they are produced. They are produced by a constriction, that is a stop followed by a sudden burst of energy. So that is why in the spectrogram, it will be present as a silence bar, which will be followed by energy at high frequency regions. For example, this you can see here for pa, a pa. So this is the spectrogram for a pa. So basically what we'll have is, this is the silence bar, and that will be followed by high frequency. You can see here energy here, high frequency regions, and that again will tell me that this is a plosive. So again, the where exactly the energy is present here, that will help us in identifying whether it is a pa or whether it is a ta or whether it is a ka. That is distinguishing between the different stop consonants. That will be possible with expertise in using reading spectrograms, where we will see that the energy, again, the location of the energy or the amount of energy, that will help us identify or distinguish between the different plosives. And silence regions, no frequency components, white region. So here, if you see here, these are the different vowels, and in the vowels you can see the horizontal striations here. These are nothing but the formants. You can see the formant structure very clearly. That will help us identify the vowels. And this is for the fricatives, and this for the, you can see how the different plosives can be identified. Now, then move on to the last type of analysis that I'm going to talk about, that is the formant analysis. So formant analysis focuses on identifying and analyzing the resonant frequencies of the vocal tract during speech production. The basic elements of speech production in human are the vocal cords and the vocal tract. We know that the source is the vocal cord, that is the vocal folds, which will start vibrating as the air pushes out of the vocal folds, and then it is going to pass through the entire vocal tract, where the vocal tract will act like a resonator, allowing certain frequencies to pass, whereas attenuating certain frequencies. So the formants are the resonances of the vocal tract. So they are referred to as the formant frequencies. Now they are the acoustic signals that distinguish the vowels in speech. In a typical spectrum envelope of a speech signal, formants depict the peaks of the envelope. The cavities of the vocal tract change in shape and volume as we move our articulators to speak, thereby constantly changing the formant frequencies. Whenever we are trying to produce the different sounds, what actually or internally we are doing is we are trying to make different shapes of the vocal tract, and accordingly there will be different constrictions because of which the different frequencies will be allowed to pass, thereby producing different formant frequencies. So formants of a speech sound are numbered in order of the frequencies, like first formant F1, second formant F2, third formant F3, and so on. Frequency location of formants, especially F1 and F2, are closely tied to the shape of the vocal tract as lips, tongue, pharynx, and jaw move to articulate the consonants and vowels. The vowel formants show up as dark horizontal bands along the spectrogram of a speech signal. Higher the horizontal band of the spectrogram, the higher the frequency of the formant. So mainly for formant analysis, the first three formants are useful, although we can have any number of formant frequencies, but the first three contains the maximum of the information. So these first three formants, how it is related to the production of the different sounds. The position of your mouth when you produce a vowel determines the structure of the vowel's formant frequencies. These formants signal a vowel's relative height and backness, and this is how the three different formant frequencies are related to the articulators. F1 tells you how high the tongue is situated in the mouth. So F1 corresponds to vowel height. So it correlates inversely with the height, meaning that higher the vowel, lower will be the F1 value. So if the vowels, like higher vowels like the E, U, they will have lower F1 than lower vowels like the A and O. F2 again tells us how far back the tongue is situated in the mouth, and this corresponds to the vowel backness, and it correlates inversely with backness, which means further back the vowel, lower will be the value of F2. So back vowels will have lower F2 than front vowels. F3 is not very informative compared to F1 and F2, but then it helps to signal R-colored vowels. So by R-colored vowels, I mean that those vowels which are modified by a following R sound within the same syllable. For example, when I'm saying bird, the is followed by a R sound where I'm rolling my tongue, and because of this, it is also going to affect the vowel. And because of this, what happens? The F3 value goes down. So R-colored vowels will have a very low F3 value as compared to the other vowels. Coming to the vowel chart. So we are all familiar with the IPA, or the International Phonetic Alphabet, where we have seen that there are two main types of information that we get from the IPA chart. First is the place of articulation, and the second is the manner of articulation. So all the sounds, all available sounds in all available languages, all of these sounds will have a particular position in the IPA, and that particular position will tell us this information, that is the where exactly the sound, or where the sound is produced, that is the place of articulation, and the manner in which the sound has been produced, manner of articulation. So these are the two main information that you get from the IPA. So similarly, we also have a vowel IPA vowel chart. An example, this figure shows you an IPA vowel chart, and it shows F1 on the, sorry, this is the y-axis. It shows F1 on the y-axis in inverse order, which means that the vowel with the inverse order like this. So vowels with the lowest F1 are closest to the top of the vowel chart, and the chart shows F2 on the x-axis. So we move from here to here, and here also inverse order, the vowels with the highest F2 are closest to the left of the chart. So F1 increases like this and F2 increases like this. So from the position of these vowels, we can find out the F1, F2, or in fact, from the F1, F2 values, we can plot the different vowels and get this particular sound. Now, formant extraction, there are different ways of estimating the formants, like linear predictive coding, Fourier transform, Capstral analysis. In Pratt, the Berg's algorithm, which uses linear predictive coding, that is used to extract the formants. So this is an example of a vowel formant analysis. This has been taken from a particular experiment done in our laboratory. And as you can see here, these are the this is the vowel A, and you can see the different values. These are different samples of the vowel A, and then you can see the formants F1, F2, F3 extracted, and then this is the final average of F1, F2, and F3. Similarly, these are the F1, F2 values for the vowel A. Then this is for the vowel E. This is for the vowel O, and then yeah, I left out U, I think. So accordingly, the average of all the different vowels here, this is A, E, and O. So these are the different values that has been extracted using Pratt, which I'll show you now. So that's all in this part. I'll be moving to the next part where I'll be demonstrating the Pratt. No, okay, sorry. So I'm talking about the Pratt. So Pratt is an open software tool for the analysis of speech in phonetics. It was designed and it continues to be developed by Paul Boersma and David Winning of the University of Amsterdam, and it is freely available. And this is, I have included the link here, so you can download the link, the Pratt, from this particular link, and this is the official website of Pratt, and there are a lot of manuals, and then there are some very interesting and important Pratt scripts are also available, which can be used for experimentation purposes. So the current manual is compiled from a variety of elaborate manuals with a special focus on those most frequently used functions and techniques for acoustic analysis. So target readers of this are those beginners who are not equipped with a strong phonetic or programming background, but want to do some phonetic analysis of speech sounds. So advantage is why this is so popular: clear visual representation of operational procedures and introduction to acoustic knowledge are provided to facilitate the use of Pratt in linguistic research. So Pratt is not the only tool that is used for speech signal analysis. There are various other tools like the Wavesurfer, then the Audacity, then there is Elan, then there is OpenSmile, and then there are a lot of Python libraries as well, like Librosa, PyDub, Torch Audio, PyAudio, Keras, etc., which are also used for carrying out speech analysis. But in spite of that, Pratt still continues to be very popular for analysis. So with Pratt, we can generate waveforms. Then we can generate the wideband and narrowband spectrograms, intensity contour, pitch tracks. Then we can make recordings, edit a recorded sound, extract individual sounds for further analysis, get information about pitch, intensity, formants, pulses, etc., enhance certain frequency regions, segment and label words, syllables, or individual phonemes, put your work in graphic form for printing. So these are all different things that we can do with Praat. So in this slide, I am presenting the different things that you can do here, and I'll be focusing on the ones that are in highlighted. For example, labeling and segmentation, because this is very important, especially for when we're working with low resource data, because nowadays, since we have shifted to deep learning architectures, we don't have to go for, in deep learning, we don't have to go for the labeling and segmentation, manual labeling and segmentation. We don't have to extract features. The deep learning model will do everything. But if you're working with low resource languages, then this becomes important, because then we have to do the labeling and all the annotation on our own, and then extract the features and then feed it to some machine learning models. So this becomes very important. Then various speech analysis, where we can extract different features like the pitch, intensity, formants, etc. Then speech synthesis. To some extent, speech synthesis is also done using the CLAT acoustic synthesis model. Then listening experiments can also be carried out using Praat, where we can use some ABX tests can be used for identification and discrimination tests. So that also can be implemented in Praat. Then speech manipulation can also be done, like changing the pitch counter of a particular wave file, or extracting the pitch counter from one wave file and then transposing it on another wave file. So duration, same way, duration counters can also be manipulated. Then filtering can also be done. So these are some speech manipulation exercises. Then graphics, yeah, this Praat can be used to produce high quality PDF, PNG, or EPS files. Then Praat is also used for statistical analysis like multidimensional scaling, PCA, discriminant analysis, and so on. Another very interesting feature or important feature of the Praat tool is the programmability. So easy programmable scripting language. We don't need to start from scratch. By simply modifying or manipulating existing scripts, Praat scripts, we can use it. We can use it to communicate with other programs as well. There are different interfaces by which you can interface the Praat. For example, the Praat can be interfaced to Python also. Then learning algorithms like the feed-forward neural networks, etc., can also be implemented using Praat. Okay. Should I continue with this? May I know, like, how many of you are familiar with Praat?
Yes, you can unmute. You can unmute yourself and tell. Anyone of you knows Praat earlier? I don't think so. No reply. I don't think.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
No, ma'am.
Okay, just.
Yes, ma'am. Now visible.
Okay. You can see now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So this is the Praat window. So once you download it from the link that I have shared, you can you can download the Praat tool from that website, and then once you launch it, this is what will open. Okay. So
can you zoom it, ma'am? It is very small.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Yes, you can see now.
Yes.
Okay. So from here, like I can open a WAV file. There's also facility to record files. So I can record a mono sound here, and then I can save it also. But instead, I have already kept some sample WAV files here. So I'll be reading a file from this. Okay, so this is the first part of the window. As you can see, this is the signal actually. This is the speech signal. So this is nothing but the amplitudes at different instance of time. If I zoom it, if you can see here. So these are all different samples at different instance of time. And this bottom pane, this is the spectrogram actually. So you can see here on the y-axis you have the frequency, and on the x-axis you have time. And these dark bands you can see here, some portion are dark and gray and light. So the intensity of the darkness will tell you what is the intensity of the frequency present at that point of time. So what I can do now is see show pitch. So this blue lines that you see, this is the pitch contour. This is the pitch contour. So in this particular sentence, let me play the utterance.
Della finished her crown and returned to her cheeks with a powder ring.
Okay. So this sentence.
Della finished her crown and returned to her cheeks with a powder ring.
So it's Della finished her cry with and attended to her cheeks with a powdered rag. So basically, say for example, let me take this part.
Della finished her crown.
So this
Della
is
finished her crown.
Okay. So this is one sentence. We can one phrase you can say. So this portion. Now, as I said, this dark band, this is obviously going to be a vowel. So this is the vowel A. When I'm saying Della, this is the consonant or the stop duh here. As you can see here, duh here. This is this burst of energy. This tells me that this is a consonant. But if you see again, this portion, as I'm saying Della, when I'm saying Della, this portion is duh. And duh is a stop consonant, which is a voiced or unvoiced. It is a voiced consonant. When I'm saying duh, there is vibration of vocal folds, because of which it is considered to be a voiced consonant. So when this is a voiced consonant, that is why you can see the voicing here. This voicing that you see, the pitch that you see here, that is because this consonant is a voiced consonant. Della. Now this portion, if I see again now, as I said, this is going to correspond to A. Okay. So if I zoom it, from here I can see, say for example, this is going to be the A vowel. Right. Now here, if you see, there is periodicity. This portion from here to here, it is repeating. So if I take from here to here, suppose this is the time 0.004174. So if I take the inverse of this, say for example, what will be the inverse of this? Inverse of 0.004174. So if I take the inverse of this, it comes out to be 239, which is the frequency actually. So this also, it will be around same thing. It should be around 004277. This portion you see 004226. So from here, the frequency, the fundamental frequency is actually around 239. So what I can do is I can select a portion from here. This is where I took, I think. And then using the pitch here, from here, if I click on get pitch, it will give me the average pitch here. So see, I'm getting 235. That is the average pitch. And manually, when I calculated, I got around 239. So it's approximately the same value I'm getting manually also. So this blue that you see, that is the pitch contour. And you will see that these are all different pitch contours. This is one, this is one. So everywhere that you see, if you see this portion also, again, this portion, if I zoom, see here also you can see periodicity. You can see periodicity. So from here to here, this is the time. If I take the inverse of this, I will get the frequency here, the fundamental frequency. I will be able to get it manually. And then obviously from here, the Pratt also will be using an algorithm, pitch tracking algorithm. As I said, the autocorrelation method is used in Pratt. So it will also give me this, and I can find out the average pitch. Similarly, if I select a particular region, I can get the minimum pitch. This is the minimum pitch. Then I can find out the maximum pitch. So this is the maximum pitch for the selected segment. So whichever segment I'm getting, I can do it. Another thing that I can do is, say for example, I have selected this portion. I can list it, pitch listing. So if you see this portion, in particular timestamps, I can see the F0 values here, 288, 302, 316, 329, 238. So for this particular region, these are the pitch values. So I'll be showing you a Pratt script also, because see, for every wave file, suppose if I have to extract the values manually, it's going to take a lot of time. Every time if I have to do the pitch listing, take the pitch from this Pratt info window, then save it into an Excel file. Instead, I can write a Pratt script which will automatically do everything and then automatically save the pitch values into a into a text file also, or you can, in fact, we can store it in an Excel sheet also. Then another feature that we can see here is the intensity contour. So if you see here, the green line, that is the intensity contour. So from here to here, suppose if I take from here to here,
Della,
so this entire portion corresponds to one specific word.
Della,
Okay. Similarly, from here to here.
Della finished her cry.
See, Della finished her cry. So the pitch contour, the rising and falling nature of this pitch contour will also help me identify the words. For example, from here to here, I got one word. This is one word, Della. Then from here to here,
Finished.
this is finished. Then from here to here, her. From here to here, cry. So from the pitch contour, it might not be very accurate, but it's easy to see that there will be at least 1, 2, 3, 4 words in this sentence. Okay, that is because again I'm varying the intensity intentionally, because I want to, that is how I'm producing natural sounding speech. If this is very monotonous, then the intensity will just remain as it is, right? It is not going to, this variation you won't be able to see. The intensity contour will be very flat. So similarly, I can also extract the intensity. You can see here, intensity listing. So it is going to list down all the intensities. Then intensity, get intensity will give you the average intensity. Similarly, minimum intensity, maximum intensity. I can also draw the visible contour also. I'm using default parameters here. So you can see I can draw the contour here, and then I can save this contour. If I want to save this figure, I can save it as a PNG file. I can save it as an EPS file. Maybe if I'm using in my reports, I want to save this figure. So I can extract the figure separately and then save it as a file also. Then there are other features now. For example, here, suppose I want to extract a particular segment, this part. I can select and then I can save it as another sound file. So similarly, save selected sound as WAV file. So I can save it as a WAV file separately. So sometimes it happens that I may have a very huge recording, maybe a recording of a continuous paragraph, so that I have to segment into different sentences. So then I can use Prat tool, and then I can extract and then save it. So again, a script can be used also to do that type of thing. The next, again here, another one that I want to show is formats. And you can see here, these are the formats. The formats are all scattered. Formants settings, if I say by default, the number of formants 5. So say for example, I'm showing 4 here, I can do that. So these are the formants. So let me take this particular word.
Della.
So here, this portion corresponds to the A. So this is a vowel, and you can see that this corresponds to F1, this corresponds to F2, and this corresponds to F3, this corresponds to F4. So that is how I can see this dark bands of energy, and that is these are the formants. So this is F1, this is F2, this is F3. So these formants again will help us identify the different vowels also, because the values of the formants, as you can see in the IPA chart, the standard formants are already there, the standard vowels are already there, and you can see the formants, the range of formants for a particular vowel, the formant values for a particular vowel, the range for F1, F2, F3. So that is already there. So we can see how the F1, whether the F1 and F2 are very close to each other, or whether F1 and F2 are far away from each other. These are all different cues used for identifying the different vowels, because all vowels are going to have these dark bands. So how to identify between the different vowels? So different vowels, the placing of these bands or the resonant frequency values are different. So obviously here, if you see here, these two bands are far apart. So there can be a vowel here, say for example, this particular vowel, the bands are near. These two bands are close to each other. So this type of information will be used to identify the vowels also. So that is about the formants. Then spectrogram, the spectrogram is already there. I've already talked about the spectrogram. Okay, spectrogram, one more thing is that the wideband and narrowband spectrogram. So normally for wideband, if you see here, let me go to spectrogram, advanced spectrogram settings. It's given in a different manner, right? So if I say, for example, reduce the number of timestamps. Is this? If I make it 1000, let me see what happens. Okay, so here if you see the window length, what is the window length? This is 5 milliseconds. So this is a 5 millisecond window, right? So if I want it to be a 50 millisecond window, then what I will do is, say for example, this is a 50 millisecond window. 50 millisecond window, you see now the change you see. 5 millisecond window means better temporal resolution, which means it is a wideband spectrogram. Now this is 50 millisecond window, so it's a bigger window size, and this is a narrowband spectrogram. So in the narrowband spectrogram, if you see here, this horizontal striations you can see here, this will help us find out the fundamental frequency and the harmonics. Say for example, in this case, if you see here, the first horizontal striation, what is the value? Around 267. So 267 is going to be the fundamental frequency. So let me see if I check this and I get the average pitch. It comes out to be 259, near about what I just mentioned, 259. So directly by looking at the spectrogram, I can have an idea about, I don't have to calculate it. Directly from here, I can see that, okay, the fundamental F naught is around 230, 220, 230, and say 300. So this band. Then these are all different harmonics. So if I'm interested in the fundamental frequency, if I'm interested in the harmonics, then I will be using a narrowband spectrogram. And these features that I'm talking about, the fundamental frequency and its harmonics, these are considered to be source features, because source, what is the source? Source is the vocal fold and in the glottis. So how the vocal fold is vibrating, that we know from the fundamental frequency. So fundamental frequency is a source feature. So from here, if I'm interested in the source features, then I will be using a narrowband spectrogram. Similarly, spectrogram settings, again, I am using now a smaller window, say 5 millisecond. So if I apply it now you can see here the dark bands or the formants. So these dark bands that you see, these are nothing but the formants. If I let me take out the formants, show formants. So this is a dark band. So this is F1, this is the next dark band, this is F2, this is the next dark band, so this is F3. Similarly, by looking at this, I can at least say that these are voice segments. From here, there is voicing. Here again, there is voicing. So this can be something, maybe a lateral or a semi-vowel sort of a thing, because there is periodicity, but the energy is very low here. So I can say this is a lateral, or it may be a semi-vowel. So again, this is a vowel because there are very strong resonances here. So this is again supposed to be a vowel because this is, say, formant 1, this is formant 2, this is formant 3. So if I want to study formants, then I will be using a wideband spectrogram. And formants are the filter parameters or the filter features, because formants are resonances of the vocal tract, and the vocal tract is considered to be the filter in the source filter model of the speech production model. So in the speech production model, in the source filter model, the source is the vocal fold and the filter is the vocal tract. So when I'm talking about formants, I'm talking about the filter features. So that's why the two different types of spectrograms can be used for studying the two different types of features, that is source features or filter features. Then another thing here I can show is the spectral slice. Okay, so if I take a particular segment here, say I'm taking this here, I can view the spectral slice. So in the spectral slice, it shows me actually the fundamental frequency and the formants here. So this is going to be the fundamental frequency, and these are all the corresponding peaks. These are the formants. So this is the fundamental frequency. This is F1. This is F2, this is F3. So that type of information can be retrieved from the spectral slice. So sometimes you might have to analyze the signal. So means then you can use a spectral slice, and this again spectral slice, I can import, I can save this as a figure, and then I can use it in my report wherever it is required. Okay, so that is one type of thing. Let me move on to the formant analysis part. Okay, one more thing, the annotation. Annotation, as I said, the annotation is very important, and it's very easy and very user-friendly manner. We can do the annotation in a very user-friendly manner. So suppose I want to annotate this. Okay, so let me say this is my WAV file. This is the sentence. Okay, so I want to annotate it. So I will be using 2 text grid, and these are the different tiers that I want to use. So say, for example, I want to annotate the word, then I want to annotate syllable, and I want to annotate the phonemes. So I'm adding 3 tiers. In the first tier, I'll be adding the words, and in the second tier, the syllables, and the third tier, the phonemes. So I'm not going to use a point process. So point tiers are mainly used where at a particular point, I want to highlight the particular feature. So here I'll be using only different tiers here. See here. So now, you can see here, these are the 3 tiers that I have added. This is the first tier, that is the word tier. This is the syllable tier, the second tier, and this is the third tier, the phoneme tier. Like I said, from here to here,
Della,
this is Della, isn't it? So I can use from here to here. So I can say this is Della, right? Similarly, from here to here, this segment
finished,
finished. So I can write finished. From here,
her,
try. And this portion, as you see, this is silence. So I can say still or silence. So this is how, I'm not going to annotate the remaining part. So this is how I have annotated. I'm using annotations for the first tier, which is the word. Similarly, for the syllable, suppose this is my word. So what I can do is, inside this word, I have 2 syllables, de and la. So
Della, Della, Del, Del,
so
Del, Del,
I can write de here and say la here. So instead of this, I can also use the IPS symbols also I can use here from this chart. If I want, I can use a different phonetic, I can do phonetic transcription also here. Similarly, I can use this. Now in the phoneme segment now, again, this is again even more tougher, because for every syllable has to be broken into the phoneme. So for example, in de, I have 2 phoneme sounds, d and e.
Del, 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 Del,
So you can see again from here,
La, 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 La,
so the la is very small here, okay, and this is the so while doing this type of annotation here, there are we'll have to look at a lot of things. For example, it's not just the sound that we hear. Obviously the segments we can play and listen to the sounds also, but again the spectrogram also plays a very important role, because like I said, immediately by looking at the spectrogram, I know that from here to here it is my first word. Similarly, from here to here, I can at least have an idea about this the energy that I see here, the energy here. This energy corresponds to the voiced consonant d, and this energy corresponds to the vowel a. So I know that this part is going to be de. So similarly, the waveform also, sometimes the waveform also helps me to understand where exactly my boundaries or where exactly the signal has to be segmented, and to annotate it accordingly. So this is an example of how annotation can be carried out. And then I can save this text grid file. I can save it, and then this text grid file, suppose I have, once the file has been, this WAV file has been annotated. Now suppose I want to write a Pratt script to extract the features. So I can use the Pratt script. Now I can write it in such a manner that, say for example, specifically I want to extract the features of only so and so segments. So those type of things, then suppose the first word I want to extract, then I can specify that in the in my Pratt script, so that only from the word tier it will take the first word and then find out the features from that particular wave signal. So that way the scripts also can be written accordingly. So, so annotation, pitch, formants I have done. Okay, another thing that can be done is pitch manipulation. So let me take another example here. I have a male and female audio here. So I can play this.
She looked at the sky.
She looked at the sky.
So the sentence is, the utterance is, she looked at the sky, and this is a female voice and a male voice. Now what I want to do is, so this is maybe for, suppose I want to change the gender of a voice, or for that sort of an application, or sometimes we might have to extract the pitch contour of a particular wave file in, say, language A, and then superimpose that pitch contour in a corresponding sentence in language B. So in those type of activities, what we can do is we can extract the pitch contour, we can extract the duration contour from a particular wave signal that, let me say, is the source wave file, and then superimpose or combine it with the audio of a destination audio file. So that type of task also can be done in Pratt. Say for example, I'm taking the female audio file, manipulate. So female audio, say for example, 100, would be 500, but anyway, this won't matter. So I've created the manipulation object for the female audio file. Similarly, for the male audio file also, I'm creating the manipulation object. Okay. So now from the female manipulation object, I can extract the pitch tier. So I have extracted the pitch tier here. Now what I'll do is I will combine the manipulation audio male audio with object with the pitch tier female, and then I can replace it. So now what will happen in this audio file, I have replaced the pitch contour in the male audio file with the pitch contour from the female audio file. So if I play this now,
She looked at the sky.
so you can see that somehow it's not sounding very female-like, but still you can see that the pitch contour has been manipulated. So there are a lot of other things to do also. For example, now what is happening is that the different segments may not be aligned. For example, each sentence has different words. Now both the speakers are speaking at different speaking rates. So if I take the timestamps, then it will not correspond together, because maybe the female speaker is speaking faster than the male speaker. Then what will happen? The samples of the different words may not align. So those type of things again can be done using other techniques like dynamic time warping. So to warp the two segments. So in that case, if you do that, then obviously this type of manipulation will be even better. So similarly, the duration tier can be extracted and superimposed on this other signal also. So that is another task I wanted to show you. What else is left? Filtering, yeah. So another task can be filtering. So let me remove this files. Okay, so I have this sentence.
Della finished her crayon and attended to her cheeks with a powder rag.
Okay, let me take another this file. this female audio, suppose.
She looked at the sky.
Okay, so if I take this, suppose I want to create, I'll add some noise to this. Okay, so what I can do is I can have some random noise here. I can generate a random noise, and I can use different formula to generate the random noise. Here I'm simply creating some random numbers. So random noise using this. So what will happen is I have this random noise which you can play. Yeah, so this is some Gaussian noise that has been added. And if you see here, this is the waveform, this is the noisy signal, and this is the corresponding spectrogram. Okay, so what I can do now is, for this signal, then and this signal, oh sorry, for the random female and this one. Oh sorry, I also had to specify the time. I think I have to specify the time maybe. What's the time? The time is 1.2527. Let me check once if it can be done without that also. I can combine to stereo, fine. When I combine this, yeah. So you can see that the two signals are actually not aligned because my the noisy signal that I created, that was shorter than the sound wave. So that also can be done because there's a facility to use the same length. Now, once it is combined, now if I play it, you can see. So you can see the noisy signal, the noise has been superimposed on the female audio file. So this one, why I'm showing is I just want to show that you can filter, to use filter. So there are different ways of filtering. For example, we can use a pass band filter. So these are already by default, the filters are here. For example, a pass band filter is there. So if I want to allow only a certain band of frequencies to pass, then I can use this pass band filter. Similarly, I can use a stop band filter also to stop a certain band of frequencies. Or I can use a filter function with some specific formula that I want. So I can create my own formula. I can use that. And the simplest is to reduce the noise. What I can do is I can give a sample of the noise. For example, in this particular noisy signal, this is the combined signal that you see, view and edit. So in this portion, I know that this from here to here, this is noise only, isn't it? From here to here, if you see, this is pure noise because my signal is not starting before that. So this portion is pure noise. So from 0 to this point, which is 0.04, 0.04, right? So if I use filter from 0 to 0.04, this is a sample of the noise that I want to remove. I'm just informing that from here to here, this is noise. So what my function will do, the Pratt algorithm will do is, it will remove that type of noise from the entire signal. So if I apply this, okay, should be subtract. So let me not do this. This is actually, yeah, this is in stereo actually. So this is mono, right? This is mono. So let me do this. I will combine this and this random noise, combine to stereo, view and edit. Oh, this is very small. Okay. What is the time? 1.2527. 1.2527. 1.7. 7 start. Okay. Oh, I again combined it with. I don't know why this is happening. Okay. Anyway, from here to here, I'm taking the sample 0.3696. There's not much time, so I'll just wind it up. So from here, if I want to filter, say remove noise. What was this thing? I forgot again. Point 0.38. Point 38. I'm sorry, there's some problem here actually. But anyway, since there's not much time, you can use the filter function, and then simply I have to specify the sound, and then it will automatically use the noise. So here in Praat, there's only one method algorithm which is used, that is the spectral subtraction method. And using that method, the noise will be filtered and the filtered signal will be available for you. So I just... Oh.
Della finished her
Now it is
and attended
denoised.
to
Yeah,
her
sorry.
cheeks with the powder light.
So you see the sound sentence. Now it is denoised. Yeah, now it's working. So it has been denoised here. This is the denoise signal again.
Della finished her crown and attended to her cheeks
Yeah.
with the powder.
This is the denoise signal. Okay. So another thing that I wanted to show you is, suppose now, like I said, using a Praat script for feature extraction. So what I have is in this folder, if you see here, the vowel analysis, what I'm doing is I'm keeping all the audio files in the one folder, and I'm keeping the corresponding text grid files in another folder. Then I have this Praat script. So what I'll do is I will open this Praat script. So you can see this Praat script as, and this script actually, you need not learn entire scripting language. So most of the scripts are already available where it's very easy to understand. You simply have to modify some things. For example, if you see here, wave folder dollar, choose directory, select wave folder, select text grid folder. After that, the output path has been specified, and this is the CSV file where I want to store the extracted features. So output path, what will be the different columns? The file name will be there, timestamps will be there, and the phonemes will be there for every phoneme, F1, F2, F3, and then F2 minus F1. So these values I'll be saving in the CSV file. So once I run this script, you see here, if I run the script, what will happen is it will ask me to select the source one. So suppose I have the vowel analysis, I'm using the audio file. This is my audio file. Then again, I am going to select the text grid file. Okay, I have selected the text grid file. So now all the processing has been done, and it is saved to which file? It is saved to this one. I have specified the file name here. What is the file name? Rabha vowels underscore formants 1. So if I look at the folder again, if you see here, it's in the wave file, or this folder. So that is what I have given. So in this folder, if you see, yeah, like I said, the file name is there, the timestamp is there, whatever vowels, phonemes, that corresponding phoneme is there, and for every phoneme, F1, F2, F3, F2 minus 1. So everything has been extracted and saved in the CSV file. So why I showed you is that in the first case, I showed you like once we annotate the WAV file, for every file, I have to select and extract the features using pitch listing. And then from there, I have to copy paste to another file. So instead of, so if I have hundreds and thousands of WAV files, manually doing that is impossible. So I will put all my WAV files and the corresponding annotated text grid files. So the text grid files will tell me the different segments. So that annotation has to be done manually. And then using this Prat script, what I have done is I have taken all the files from the specified folders one by one, extracted the features, and then I have stored it in a CSV file. So most of the Prat scripts, or like for main popular common task scripts, are available. Only thing is that according to your need, you might have to modify certain aspects of the file. So I think I'll stop here. I have exceeded my time.
No, ma'am. So,
So
any
if
queries from
you
anyone
have any queries, you can ask
want
me.
to ask? Yeah, you can unmute yourself. You can ask the questions. Yes, any one of you? And you have to load this Prat for the practice. Fine. Any doubt, you can talk with ma'am directly. Okay, ma'am is there in Tejpur University. So if you visit the site, you can get the mail ID, all those things. Okay. So I don't think anyone having any questions. Somik, Ayush, Rabia, I don't think. They all understood. Anyway, if you were going to start the work really, so you can contact me.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, ma'am. Very informative system that session.
Thank you.
And thank you very much. You have
Thank
accepted
you
our
for
request
having me
and
here.
given your time.
Thank you.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Ma'am,
Yes,
good afternoon.
Mandana ma'am. Yes.
I have one question, ma'am. Like you have done many analysis by using this Pratt, and really wonderful because I also done the same thing.
Okay.
I have a question. Like when you have used Librosa library and this Pratt, did you check any difference between them? That a question also in my mind. Like
Yes, exactly. For Librosa, I have not used this. My students have been using Python mainly. So, but
yes.
there are differences. There are differences. Like I have used MATLAB also for extracting different features, because it depends on the algorithm that is used internally. Because for Prat, there are some fixed algorithms which are being used. So at this point of time, I do not know if there is any possibility of changing the algorithms or using different algorithms in Prat. But by default, they are using different algorithms. So when we have, like I have asked my students to perform certain experiments using different methods. For example, the autocorrelation method for pitch tracking, that is the one that is used in Prat. So there are other methods as well. So when you do that, there are differences. Sometimes we get differences. So
Yes.
Prat, I would not say Prat is the best tool. There are other tools also. And better feature extraction, I've seen MATLAB is doing better, but it's not very it's not very easy to learn and
Yes.
adapt to MATLAB but Prat is very user friendly. That is why it is becoming or used so popularly by people everywhere.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Because I have done also using this Pratt.
Yeah.
So somehow I found some differences between
Yes,
this
yes,
Libro.
there are differences. There are
Yeah.
differences.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah,
Such a
welcome.
wonderful work. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kamal sir. Okay, ma'am, I should stop here. So
Yeah,
next question will be by Dr. Monorama, ma'am, and we are supposed to join at 3 o'clock. So before 10,
yes.
10 minutes, ma'am, I will join. Fine.
Yes, 10 minutes before so that we can check it whether it
Yes,
works
yes,
or not.
definitely.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.